Folks, welcome back. I have your latest GTA home prices for week ending August 30th. Now, I've called this episode the calm before the storm. Why do I say that? Well, I can tell you one thing for sure. Nobody knows what's happening in the fall, but for what a lot of people are saying, it seems like we're headed for some craziness. The government subsidies, the federal payments, CERB, the commercial rent relief, that's all going to stop. Kids are back to school. What's happening with that as far as the teachers' health, the kids' health, and what they bring back? More and more people back to work. What's happening with that? Are we going to have a second wave? And if so, how bad is it going to be? Things could be really bad or not so bad. But one thing's for sure, everybody has an opinion about it. And another thing is, for sure, nobody knows, but they talk like they know for sure. So let's get right into GTA home prices. I'm going to start off with Vaughan. I'm going to talk about freehold, then condos, and then I'm going to get into the city of Toronto, and I'm going to talk about freehold and condos. And please, comment below. Your comments, I love them, and I respond to all of them, and it encourages me to keep doing this, and I really appreciate the dialogue. So please comment below and subscribe. Hit the bell button. This way you're reminded of future videos. Really appreciate your loyalty in watching these videos. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Okay, so this is freehold properties for Vaughan, broken down by week. Now, here's something that's really interesting. When I go back a few months and I look at the first week of the month, kind of seems like the low point in sales, and sales go up from there. Again, in July here, the first week of the month was the low point in sales, and we went up from there. August again, the low point, and we went up from there. What does that mean? I don't know. It was just really interesting to point that out. I look at that and I think that's interesting. Is it interesting to you? I don't know, but it's a fact. When we look at sales compared to the first week of March, and I'm comparing to the first week of March because that was the high point before we went into the lockdown. We are basically where we were when it comes to sales at the first week of March. Looking at average sold price from one week to the next, we went down slightly. When I compare, though, the average sold price to the first week of March, we are basically the same, down slightly by 0.2%. So we're basically where we were prices, sales-wise, where we were before we went into the lockdown. Another interesting point that I'm looking at here, when I look at the last 4 weeks, although you see fluctuations up and down, and you're going to see that when you're analyzing sales on a weekly basis, you're going to see a lot of fluctuations. Prices have been pretty much the same, just off by a few $1,000s each way, up and down over the last few weeks. So prices have been pretty much steady. Comparing to last year, we're up almost 13% when it comes to average sold price. Now, it's important you keep in mind that last year was a typical market. Very important you keep this in mind. We had our spring, we had our summer, we had our fall, and there was no outside influence, we'll say, especially nothing like a health crisis. So when we look at these numbers for last year, come August is usually a downturn when it comes to sales, a downturn when it comes to average sold prices. Naturally, August, the end of July, August is vacation season. People are going away, they leave the country, they go to the cottage for a week or two, they just travel, they take their family and they go. What did we do this year? Drove to Barrie for the day, went to Niagara-on-the-Lake, really didn't leave the country, and stayed home. And it's a whole different season this year. And did we have a spring market? No, we were home, we were in lockdown. So this summer was our new spring. And we're seeing that with sales, we're seeing that with listings, we're seeing that with average sold prices. So when you compare this time to last year, you're not really comparing apples to apples, but this is what we're looking at, and we are way ahead of last year's average sold price. Sales. We're doing far more this year at this time than we did last year for the same period. Now, 57% of the sales done in Vaughan done last week, 57% were at list price or more. Excuse me. So 57%, that's more than half. There's a lot of activity out there. There's a lot of people fighting for properties. Listings, we are way ahead of where we were last year. Now, I personally know there's a lot of listings going out there just because of the uncertainty in the fall. People are afraid that prices are going to be coming down, and they see prices are strong right now, which is a surprise to a lot of you out there. And because prices are strong and you're not sure what's ahead, you're figuring, I better put my house on the market now. You could be right, who knows, but everybody does what's best for their family, and it's important you've got a strong realtor helping you guide through this, because mistakes can cost you thousands. Months of inventory have been pretty steady for freehold properties in Vaughan. Over the last few weeks, around the 2 months of inventory mark, and for August 30th, they were at 1.9, which kind of explains how steady average sold prices have been for the last few weeks. Vaughan condos, there's not that many sales. We're way off the mark from where we were pre-lockdown. When you have this few sales, you're going to get more fluctuations in average sold price, just because 1 or 2 sales can skew the numbers. So average sold price did shoot up from 1 week to the next. And average sold price right now for this week is very similar to where we were pre-lockdown. We're way ahead of where we were last year, but the previous week we were less than where we were last year. So take it as you will, but remember, there's not that many sales, so 1 or 2 sales will skew the numbers. Solds are just slightly above where they were last year. Listings, way more when it comes to Vaughan condos than we had last year. And that explains the months of inventory. It's just approaching the balanced market stage. Now, when we have between 4 to 6 months of inventory, that's a balanced market. We're pretty much there, and I do expect prices to be coming down when it comes to Vaughan condos. Looking at City of Toronto, okay, there's a lot going on here. So when we look at sales, over the last 3 weeks, sales on a weekly basis have been very, very similar. Comparing to where we were first week of March, sales for Toronto freehold properties are basically at the levels that we were before we went into the lockdown. So we've made up quite a bit of ground over, because we were at one point down to just a few, less than 100 sales a week. Average sold price, the last few weeks, average sold price has been coming down, but last week it jumped up by quite a bit, by almost 70,000. We're sitting now at 1,380,000 is the average sold price for a freehold property in Toronto. Excuse me, my voice is going. So looking at this price compared to pre-lockdown, we're not close yet. We're 8.6% lower than we were before we went into the lockdown. Imagine how much lower we were on these weeks here where we were dropping in price. Although price did shoot up last week, is it a trend? We'll have to wait and see. But the following report is going to be on a monthly basis, so that's going to give us a lot more information. Compared to where we were last year, average sold price is almost 13% higher when it comes to freehold properties in Toronto. Now, just for a second, I want to explain what that means. Well, I've already explained that August last year was a typical season. August this year seems to be like our spring. It just seems to be on steroids this summer. But looking at a number like this, 12.7% higher than where we were last year. Well, if you bought last year, well, you should be feeling pretty good. Prices are a little bit higher than we were last year. If you didn't buy and you're waiting for prices to come down, if you are wanting to buy and last year thought, oh, they're too high, I'm going to wait, you missed the boat. April was the low point. And it's so hard to predict when is the low point. If you think, well, they're still pretty high, I'm going to wait another year, what if they go up another 10%? So it's really a tricky game. As a general rule, if you're buying a house to live in, a general rule, it's really hard to time the market to buy at exactly the right time. It's just better to spend time in the market. So buy the home that you can afford and stay there for a few years. And you'll see that even if prices do come down, they'll generally over time go up again. So it's pretty safe bet there that you should just buy when you're able to buy. But you need some coaching. Now, did your home, your specific home, go up almost 13%? It's hard to say. Maybe it went up 25, 30%. Maybe it went down 10 or 15%. The true mark of whether your home went up is what's happening with similar homes like yours in your neighborhood. That is the true test. Did the value of your home go up? This is a generalization of homes that are being sold. What's the average sold price? Sales. 348 sales last week. Way more than what we did last year at this time. Now, of these 348, 2/3 of those, 66%, 2/3 sold at list price or more. 2/3. That's a huge number. It's a much more aggressive market than we had last year, where only 40% sold at list price or more. Listings. We are way ahead of last year's new listings mark. And months of inventory, 1.4, 1.5, 1.5. It's a very solid seller's market. Looking at City of Toronto condos. Well, sales of 224 that we did for last week are much lower than we were pre-lockdown. So the other home types, the other home types, we're at the pre-lockdown sales figures. Not for condos, we're much lower. And when it comes to average sold price, we're also much lower. And for condos, price dropped quite a bit from 1 week to the next. Dropped by about 60,000 when it comes to average sold price. Compared to last year, we're very close to where we were last year, although most of the year we've been higher than where we were last year. Last week, we're just slightly above where we were to last year's average sold price. Sales for condos in the City of Toronto are much lower. We're 224 sales for the week, where last year we were very close to 300 sales for the week. Listings, way higher. See what's happening here? Sales lower than last year. Listings much higher than last year. Months of inventory has been creeping up week after week. We're now at 4.5 months of inventory. It's very much a balanced market. As months of inventory go up, prices will tend to come down. That's my report for week ending August 30th. My name is Santo Sessa with RE/MAX Premier. I remind you, I love to hear your comments. Comment below. If you have any real estate questions, I'm a full-time realtor. My wife is a full-time realtor. This is all we do. We're here to help. Have a great day.